right, I think we should be good to get started. So first and foremost, I just want to thank you, Adelaide, for coming on, giving us a little insight into what product management at Ford looks like. So this is our first meeting with the Automotive Industry Club. So if any of you guys don't know me, I'm Ryan Smith. Me and Aiden started the club back in October. So we're super excited to have you all here. And I guess let's get into it. Aiden, do you have anything you want to say?
Oh, I don't think we can hear you, Aiden.
Yeah, I don't think your mic's on.
Can you all hear me?
All right.
Yeah.
Sorry. Hey everybody, I'm Aiden. Just super excited to finally start, have a first meeting, have an awesome guest speaker saying awesome information about an awesome industry. Yeah, I guess we're good to go. I don't have much to say. Yeah.
All right. Well, Adelaide, the floor is all yours.
Awesome. You guys have set the bar really high.
Thank you.
So, but excited to be here and really excited to share a little bit about product management and specifically product management at Ford. So as Ryan mentioned, my name is Adelaide Curry. I am a product manager, if you couldn't guess, at Ford in home charging. So I help build all of the digital experiences for the customer when they purchase a home charge station from Ford. And then they download the app and they have to set it up. So I help deliver all of those features and functions. So today, just going to share a little bit about myself, where I came from a personal and then professional background. And then I'll give you a glimpse into products. So for those of you that do not know what product management is, that is okay. I'll share a little bit about what that means. And then I'll make sure to leave plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So I'll probably go very high level with most of the slides. So first, just a little bit about me. So I like to share about myself in pictures, but I graduated from the University of Illinois back in 2018 with a degree in systems engineering and design. I was not only an engineering student, but I was also a full-time D1 student athlete. So I was a swimmer, as you can see in the picture on the bottom left. And that was a really awesome experience and really helped me balance my time in the classroom, while also making sure that I was making it to practice. It was really challenging, but I think it's really helped build me into the person that I am today. And obviously, I have to give a shout out to my parents. So they're the ones in the middle there. They've been super supportive of me throughout my entire career, and I wouldn't have even considered engineering if it wasn't for my dad. And so I am very grateful that they have been such role models in my life. And so while I was a student at the University of Illinois, I attended the engineering career fair, and a previous alum swimmer told me to come talk to Ford. And at the time, I was like, I don't even want to look at Ford. I don't want to do automotive. That sounds lame. I'm not into cars. And then I started talking to the recruiter, and she started sharing a lot about manufacturing operations and how it was really about being lean. And it was right up my alley with my degree. So I applied, I interviewed, and I got an internship for the summer between my junior and senior year. And I was actually placed in manufacturing operations, and I was relocated out to Cleveland, Ohio, and worked at the Ohio assembly plant. So that's that middle picture there. It was just me and two other interns. I will say that's pretty uncommon for Ford. Usually a lot of their interns are located centrally in Michigan, so you get this huge intern experience, but it was just us three, and we each worked in a different portion of the manufacturing facility. So I was in the body shop, which is where we weld all the different metals together to build the frame of the vehicle. So I helped optimize the line by just figuring out the welding current that needed to occur in order to make the process really lean and to avoid any problems or issues by the time the vehicle got to the end of the line. And so one thing that's really great about Ford is after you finish your internship, they usually like to convert interns into what they call Ford College Graduates, or FCGs. And this is pretty much a rotational program. So you get to do on average 6-month stints in a variety of different departments. And being someone that was very indecisive about what they want to do with their career, I felt like that was the best path for me to take. So I took that opportunity, moved out to Michigan after graduation, and rotated to a variety of different assembly plants, and got to do a lot of really cool creative things, both on the product development side and then also in ergonomics, operations, Lean Six Sigma, all of that. So it's really cool to just get a really speedy, almost shorter internship type feel work while still being full-time. And then COVID hit right towards the middle of my rotational program, and I got the incredible opportunity to support Project Apollo at Ford. So one of the projects that Ford did was they actually partnered with GE and built ventilators. So they brought in a core group of engineers at Ford and hourly employees, and then they partnered with the GE healthcare experts to help figure out how we need to build these ventilators. So I got to see how to apply my manufacturing mindset to a totally different field. And it was absolutely incredible. I met some really amazing people through this. And it's something that I'll carry with me throughout my career. I also got COVID kittens. So my friend found kittens on a boat in her marina, and I took 2 of them. So I didn't get a COVID dog, but I got a COVID kitten. So and then right as COVID was starting to kind of get a little bit better, a lot of my work was starting to be fully remote. So I decided to move back to Chicago. I started my MBA part-time at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. And that was really when I was first exposed to product management. And then when my rotational program fully ended, I was trying to find opportunities at Ford, and I found one where I was helping with an internal tool to deliver data to our executive leadership team. So that was my first exposure to product management. And then just last July is when I pivoted to home charging. So it's been a really incredible, fast journey in product management, but I'm very grateful for it and having that opportunity at Ford. So speaking of that, what is product management? So I think this quote by Deep Nishar really sums it up really well. So a great product manager has the brain of an engineer, the heart of a designer, and the speech of a diplomat. So pretty much what that means is that product management combines 3 different sectors, and you help oversee those 3 sectors. So it looks at user experience, technology, and the business. So it's really a function that guides every step of a product's life cycle, and your main responsibility is putting the customer first. So regardless of what the user experience team says or the technology team or even the business says, as long as your customer wants it, it's going to be good for the business. And then that's why we as product managers have to have a really strong vision for the product. So it's your responsibility to not only define that product, but to really make sure that it's defining the vision of the product based on your user needs. So making sure that you're not only representing those needs, but then aligning your stakeholders. So those 3 groups of individuals around the product vision that you want. And you also want to make sure that you're outlining what success looks like. So you don't want to just deliver millions of features to your customers and your product, because that's probably not going to be successful. You want to make sure that you take the approach of delivering lean principles and lean product, and making sure that at each step you're measuring and building. So the way that we kind of tackle this is through the double diamond approach. This is technically a design thinking process, but for any of you who have taken a human-centered design or design thinking class, you've probably seen this approach, but it pretty much takes the idea of divergent and convergent thinking and applies it to design. So you have 2 triangles, one that's focused at the beginning of the process on designing the right thing, and the second side is designing things right. So you start with a problem, or maybe it's a new feature, and you start to expand your peripheral vision and you look to discover. So this is where you really want to understand the user issue rather than just making assumptions on what's going on. So it involves speaking to a lot of your customers, internal and external, to just get a huge insight into what is actually going on with your product, or what new features and functions are customers actually looking for. And so then once you hit that stage in the middle where you've seen and talked to everyone that you could possibly talk to, then you start to converge. And so that's when you hit the exploration and definition stage. So this is where you focus in on your outcomes that came out of the discovery phase. And you really make sure that you're helping define the challenge in a different way. And from that definition, you should have the problem definition. So you've taken that problem and you've essentially defined it. And then when you hit the second triangle, where you're starting to actually hit the design portion, you finished your research. This is where, again, you begin to diverge. So you expand that peripheral vision, you develop and you test. So this is where you give different answers to the problem that you just so clearly defined, and you seek inspiration elsewhere. So a lot of the time I'm looking at different products in the automotive space. I'm also looking at products that have nothing to do with automotive. Like I was showing a video to my team the other day from the iRoomba setup in the iRoomba app. So you start to look at a bunch of different products, try to figure out what they're doing. Maybe they experienced a very similar solution or an issue and they actually had a solution for it, or they have a feature that customers would really enjoy in your product. And then you begin to converge again in the final stage, which is where you just want to start to figure out what's actually going to work for your product, talking to your internal team who's going to be developing it, what solutions are feasible, which ones are not. And then finally, at the end of this double diamond, you should come out of it with a solution that is clearly defined and really focused on the customer needs. So that being said, I have found that your most unhappy customers are your greatest source of learning. Those 1-star reviews can tell you a lot about an application in the App Store, and they're actually the reviews that product managers want to see because they are the ones that give them the most insight. If everyone were happy with the product, there'd be very few ways to go wrong and very few ways to really make sure that you're being innovative in your thinking. So making sure that you're talking to those customers, even the unhappy ones, if you can win them over, then you've been super successful. So taking that double diamond approach, what does a typical day or a typical sprint look like for me as a product manager at Ford? So a lot of my job revolves around starting with talking to customers. So I love to talk to customers to figure out what they like about the product that I'm building, what don't they like, where are they encountering issues, what's going on, how are they using it, when are they using it. I try to figure out their habits and try to anticipate their every need. So that is core to starting any sort of new feature or new functionality development in your application. From there, you go and you prioritize and define those opportunities. So after talking to customers, you probably have a million different paths that you can take and new opportunities that you can provide to them. How are we going to find success? What are the requirements for building some of those features? Where are we going to prioritize them and how do they fit in the roadmap? We typically like to define a roadmap for an entire year so that ties into our product vision. Where are we going to prioritize that? Are we going to deliver that in Q1? Are we going to try to deliver that in Q3 because we have other factors that need to be in place before we can do that? This is the stage where I'm pretty much working with my team to figure out what exactly we want to build based on talking to customers. And then you put the customer needs first again, and you design. So you want to make sure that your design is not only user-centric, but it's just easy to use and it's understandable. You don't want to push a feature that no one understands what the purpose is, and so they're just confused when they enter your product. And then you build it. So I work a lot of time with technical product managers and engineers. I'm actually not the one building it. So I just have to be able to speak their language. And that's kind of where my engineering background has been really essential because I have that technical expertise to understand coding. It's not essential to be a product manager, but definitely helps in this stage of the process. And we typically work in 2-week sprints. So every 2 weeks, we're delivering new features to our application, either on the front end or the back end. And then we enter the phase of just measuring and being more innovative again. So how do we continue to build on what we just delivered? How are customers using it? Is it successful? How can we learn from anything that went wrong in this process and be better next time? So you don't just want to just build, as I mentioned before, you don't want to push a million features out there. You want to build, measure, and learn from the whole experience. So my last slide for you all is just outlining what makes a great product manager. So as I mentioned, engineering was super helpful for me to be able to speak the language of a lot of my technical team, but it's not essential. So if you're not an engineer, that's totally okay. I think that there are 4 really key areas that someone should be an expert or a master in order to be a successful product manager. So the first one is just knowing the lay of the land. You have to be comfortable asking lots of questions, even if they sound dumb, comfortable talking to customers, hearing the good and the bad, understanding the goals of the business. So I do have to understand what Ford wants out of the product, but then also just knowing your product through and through. So if you really know your customer, you really know your product, you can go so far in product management. You also want to be forward thinking. So as I mentioned, you want to anticipate the needs of the customers. So part of the way that you do that is by empathizing with them, putting yourself in their situation, because it's sometimes challenging to think, oh, what feature would I want in here? But truly, I'm not a customer. Like, I don't own a home charge station. I'm not the customer for it, but I have to anticipate what they would want by talking to them, knowing my product through and through, and just being able to say, they probably want this button that would allow them to start and stop charging through their phone. So just trying to put yourself in their position and think ahead, because most of the time when you talk to customers, they don't even know what they want until they have it. You also want to empower the team to make decisions. So if I had to talk to every single person that asked my team a question and answer that question individually, I would never get any work done. So by creating that shared brain and really making sure that you're aligning the team on the vision of the product and what the goals are and how we're going to measure success, then if someone goes to them with a question, they can answer without having to go to me. They can make their own decisions, and I can trust them to make their own decisions the same way that they can trust me. I'm still guiding the vision of the product forward and making sure that we're staying on task, but they're feeling empowered as well to take on their roles and responsibilities and really deliver more. And then finally, developing a thick skin. So this one's probably the toughest because you're never going to make everyone happy, both your customers and leadership. It really helps to just be able to back up everything that you're saying and why you made certain decisions. Having data is really helpful in doing that, but it's not essential. So again, if you know your product and you know the lay of the land, you're most likely going to be able to define and talk to why you actually made a specific action. The leadership or your customers may still not be happy with that. So having that thick skin really helps make sure that you're protecting yourself and making sure that you know you're doing the right thing for the product. So with that, I will open it up to questions.
I think I have one just to get us started. I guess, would you be able to walk us through like what a work week looks like as a product manager? I guess at Ford specifically, is this a 40-hour work week, or is it like a 60-hour work week? Are you working weekends? When do you have to be available? Because I'm sure people are reaching out to you all the time with questions and things like that.
Yeah, so great question. It definitely fluctuates. I would say that on average, I'm usually doing just a 40-hour work week at Ford. Coming from manufacturing operations where I was working closer to like 60-hour weeks, this is like more stable because a lot of the work that you're doing is like thinking ahead. The only time that you might work or get a call after hours is if there's a problem that's causing the app or your product to physically break, and customers can't access it, and it's essential for them to access and use the product. That has never happened to me yet, and my product technically isn't so dependent on, I guess it is like you don't need the application to work necessarily to charge a vehicle at home. So if there's a tech issue, most people don't end up calling me for it. We just talk about it the next day and start to resolve it then. But a typical work week, I would say, especially now, I pretty much start my week off. I meet with my technical product team. I make sure that we're staying on track for our sprint, whether we're starting a new one or we are currently in one. So if we're in one, I'm talking about how the stories are going that we're working on, how are the new feature developments going. And if we are about to start a new one, we work to talk through what's going to be pulled into that next development sprint. And then towards the middle of the week, I'm meeting with my designer, pulling in items from our roadmap, trying to figure out how we're going to build and design these new features, what they're going to look like. We recently started to like revamp the flow for like how we're going to be setting up the charge station. So a lot of my time has been actually building out that flow and then meeting with different stakeholders to make sure that we're aligned on like the goals of the setup application and how we're going to actually be using design to make sure that customers know what went wrong when something goes wrong or what to do at each step of the process. And then a lot of the time towards the end of the week is usually me spent in a tool called Jira, which is, it pretty much allows us to put stories into a backlog so that we can better collaborate across different teams and organizations. So I spend a lot of time writing different user-centric stories, defining requirements, adding in designs that we created earlier in the week, or figuring out how much effort it's going to take to actually deliver that, and breaking it down further if it's going to be a huge ask. And then every so often, not on a typical week, but I do have customer interviews, or I'm prepping for customer interviews. So just trying to learn and get more user-centric on stuff that we delivered. So that's
Gotcha.
at a very high level.
All right. We had one question. They were asking about the criticism of the job. You said that having a thick skin is important. Have there been any instances where the criticism's gotten to you, or really made you think, or given you a hard time?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think on my last job, it was probably one, and I was a newer product manager. But as I mentioned, I was building an internal tool, pretty much an internal website for our executive leadership team that had data and metrics on different organizations, so that it was pretty much a one-stop shop for executive leaders to know whether things were on track, off track. And so that was probably the hardest product management role that I've had, because my customers were internal leaders and executive, like Jim Farley level leaders. And so they would come to me and tell me that they needed a specific piece of data or needed information, and we pretty much couldn't work fast enough. So I had to prioritize things and cut some leaders' data out to prioritize other important data. So there was a feature called Blue Cruise at Ford. It's the hands-free driving. And so it was a newer feature, and one of the leaders at the time asked me to tell them how many customers were using Blue Cruise and how often were they turning it on, how many miles were driven on Blue Cruise. And there was no real data source for it at the time. It was really challenging, and it wasn't clean data. And there were a bunch of other items in our backlog that other leaders that were easier wins were asking for. So I had to tell that leader that we weren't going to be delivering their feature, at least not in the time frame that she wanted. And she blew up. It was not a good conversation, not a good call. She was very upset that she wasn't going to be getting her data. And that's kind of where I was able to say, well, we have all these other leaders that are at the same level as you who need this information and data, but we have to prioritize them because they actually have a data source. I think that was one that kind of got to me a little bit, like making me question, oh my gosh, should I be building this? Like, do I need to do this? Should I put everyone else on hold? But at the end of the day, we did get her data eventually. It just took a lot longer, and it actually motivated her to go back to her team to say, why don't we have a data source for them to use? So it turned out for the best.
Gotcha. We have another question from Olivia, and she's asking, what is the most successful product you managed? And is there anything specific about that product that you think made it very successful?
Yeah, great question. I think it's probably the current product that I'm on. So as I mentioned, I am in charge of the digital experiences for the home charging products. So part of that includes a page in Ford Pass. And I wouldn't say I joined the team late, so I didn't design and develop that page. It was there when I joined. And I think that's typical in product management. It's very rare for you to be dropped in a position where you're starting from scratch and building something new. Most of the time you're dropped into a product that's already in existence, and they want you to revamp it, make it better, improve it, or just continue driving success forward. And one of the pages on our Ford Pass page is insights. So you can get insights on how you're charging. One of the successful features that I helped deliver was actually adding cost calculator in there. So when I joined, it was just showing kilowatt hours for how much energy was consumed off the vehicle when charging at home. And after talking with customers, they kind of indicated that they were confused as to the value of seeing that. They didn't understand what 30 kilowatt hours meant. And so what my team and I did was we went back and we reevaluated what that actually means and came up with the fact that most people are more inspired by a dollar amount. And so we went and built a cost function into that page so that customers now would see 30 kilowatt hours is the equivalent of a $20 electric bill. And another feature we're working on currently that will be coming is adding savings in. So comparing that to the gas equivalent, maybe $20, 30 kilowatt hours, it's the equivalent of a $30 like gas bill. So you're saving $10 from charging at home. So that's something that we're working on currently, but isn't in development. So I guess that's something that's of value.
Gotcha. Braden was wondering, is this a job that can be done remote or hybrid, or is it usually in person?
Yeah, I am fully remote and most of my team is. My development team is in India, my designers in Florida. Ford's product development team has really embraced the remote work. There is definitely times where I want to go in and where my team goes in. So we did like an EV road trip last year where we traveled with electric vehicles and put ourselves in the customer's shoes, figuring out charging pain points. And we talked to customers in the field who were at charging stations. So yeah, so I think it definitely can be done remotely, and it can also be done in dual modality.
Gotcha. We had one that asked, what's the greatest design challenge that you solved or helped solve?
Yeah, I will go back to that Blue Cruise example. I think that one was really, really challenging to not only deliver because the data wasn't there, but because the data wasn't really clean, it was really hard for us to visualize the metrics that were important. Customers and leaders can point you in a million different directions and have a million different viewpoints. But I think we were able to take all of that data and chart it in a way where it was actually actionable. So they wanted to know how many customers used Blue Cruise. It was like, okay, so what? You know that yesterday 50 people used Blue Cruise, today 100, and then tomorrow it'll be 20. So what does that actually tell you? Is it that people aren't driving enough, or is it that people only drive like more on Mondays and Tuesdays and they don't drive as much on Fridays? Are they just not taking the highway? So we actually were able to build like a chart of the US and put it on the website. So we were able to map out where most people were driving using Blue Cruise. I think that was a really interesting design challenge, something that we didn't really expect to be diving into and visualizing some of the data. But we were able to actually map out on highways where people were using Blue Cruise, where they weren't using Blue Cruise. And that was more indicative to us. If we saw daily usage went up and we see that most of them were driving on highways, but on Tuesday, we saw usage was down, but more people were taking side roads where Blue Cruise isn't offered. So it allows more of a why factor to back up the data.
Gotcha. I had one question about what would you do differently as a high school student? Is there anything that you should be doing to kind of prepare for a career in product management or going to a master's program? Is there any advice that you'd give to your past self, both in high school and then eventually getting into your undergrad?
Yeah. I think for like high school, I feel like I probably didn't even know what I wanted to do. So maybe exploring a bit more into different opportunities. So if you're here and listening to a bunch of people in the automotive space talk about their roles, that is already a leg up where I was. I think after going into college and now in my MBA program, I would say read a lot, watch a lot of TED Talks, really just make sure that you're expanding your own knowledge as to what's out there. Because I never would have found product management if I didn't go to my MBA program and I didn't start talking to people and asking questions about what they did. There are a few good books that I suggest reading if you want to know more about product management. The one that essentially comes to mind is the Lean Product Playbook. And that one is awesome at outlining all the principles that one would need to take in order to be an excellent product manager, and gives more insight into the role. So I think just opening up your mind to new ways of learning and new tools and resources, that's probably something that I wish I had done, because before my MBA, I pretty much decided I wasn't going to do school. So it's helpful to kind of think more about how do I better myself and be more innovative.
Sounds good. Now, is product management something is that a track that you can take in your MBA, or was that something that you had even thought about at all when applying? Because I know that a lot of times they want you to have a direction when you're applying to MBA programs.
Yeah, if you're applying to MBA programs, you definitely want your application to be comprehensive and show where you want to take your career. I did not know I wanted to do product management when I applied. So my application was geared towards like more of a pivot into like biomedical or something else that I was interested in at the time. I can't even remember, but I found product management by just talking to career advisors and to friends at Ford who were in product management who had explored that space. If you do a full-time MBA program, it's easier to get an internship between the first and second year. And a lot of MBA interns are product management interns. So we had a couple from Northwestern University this past summer. And I think Ford's a bit behind in posting internship applications, but we were hoping to get a couple more interns this summer as well in product management. So don't know if that fully answers your question, Ryan, but
That
a
does.
little bit. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't have anything else. Aiden, do you have anything?
Yes, just like a pretty general question. What like motivated you to even want to get an MBA?
Yeah. I remember when I joined Ford and I was meeting my first manager, he was like, you are going to go get your MBA. And me being a fresh out of college engineering student was like, absolutely not. And then probably about a year and a half into my career at Ford, I started to realize that I knew a lot about engineering, a lot about like Lean Six Sigma principles. How do we become more efficient in our plants? But I had no idea how to tie that to like business or accounting principles. And that was something that I really wanted to grasp through an MBA. I also wanted to reach, Ford has different levels. So they have like a general salary grade and then they have a leadership level. So I wanted to eventually get to that leadership level and start being able to have mentees and just individuals that I could help grow throughout their career and like they could work and report to me. So I knew an MBA was the next step for that reason versus going to get like another engineering degree or something more focused in like accounting. So just wanted a big, broad approach to like business as a whole so that I could apply it to the work that I had been doing in the plants.
Gotcha. Appreciate it. Another question. Because I'm kind of in your shoes as a college student, I guess, because I have an internship. It's an engineering specific internship, and they presented me opportunities dealing with not more project management compared to product management. And I like doing the hands-on work with the engineering, like electrical engineering, all the circuit stuff. But I really like project management. I really like managing all that. And I just I guess my question is, I can't even think of it now. Now I've said it. I'm sorry, but
No, you're good.
hearing that explanation kind of really helped because I'm still in debate, whether I want to pursue getting my MBA or wait until I get, a job offer and see if they would pay for the MBA.
Yeah, Ford does sponsor MBAs, but I do think it's really valuable, at least it was for me, to get like a year under my belt working to really build my application. And a lot of programs have early career acceptance. So that's what I was in. If you have less than 3 years of work experience, some of them have tracks for that. So that's what I apply to. I think that is a way that I recommend to many other people so that you can still apply the principles and do part-time work. But if full-time is more your calling, that's also like a very different, I suggest full-time if you want to make a full pivot and ahead of time that you want to pivot careers.
Yeah, I'm just, still in that debate whether I want to, pursue more of a management role compared to, like a, hands-on role.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think we touched on all the questions that I got in the chat. We have 1:30 left, so we hit time perfectly. But yeah, I just want to thank you again, Adelaide, for coming out, giving us a little bit of insight into your career. And I think that we learned a lot during this session. So I can't thank you enough for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure. And if anyone has questions or wants to reach out, feel free to. My email's right there. So feel free to let me know if you have any questions after this.
All right. Well, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
you.
Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
See you, everybody.